There are ways you can buy things. There are ways businesses can buy things. And there are ways that government can get the things that it wants to get as well. I'm going to discuss these today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Hello, I'm your host, and I am Kurt. It is Friday, the 12th of March of 2021. Welcome to everyone who's coming on the Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube. Thank you for coming aboard today, and I'm happy to have you along. The subject of today's little discussion is paying the piper. And so I'm going to start by discussing the ways that you as an individual can get things, can spend money. The first thing that you can do, obviously, is earn or some other way get money that you have in your possession that you can then use to buy the various things that you want. That's the simplest solution, right? Obviously, if you can trade things, you can do that too, but most people don't tend to find themselves in the state on a regular and ongoing basis where they can do anything but trade their labor or whatever product they make for money, and then have the ability to use that money to buy other things. Now, the next thing that you can do is, if you say want to buy a car, you can go to, say, for example, a car dealership, and you can say, I want to buy that car, but I can't afford to pay for it out of what I'm making, and so I need to take out a loan in order to do that. And most times the car dealership will oblige you by trying to find a loan that will work for you that's not horribly bad. That's not to say that it's a great approach to life, but it works okay. Then, of course, the next thing that you can do is a sort of a more general line of credit where you've just got people lined up waiting to lend you money for basically nothing at all in order for you to buy the various things that you want. When I say nothing at all, of course, they're making money off of that process. And there are questions about what's actually prudent when you deal with all of this, right? You can argue that the farther into debt you get, the less prudent your activities tend to be. Now, the thing about that is that's not always true. I had a friend who bought a house. He bought that house for a lot of money, not a lot, but a fair amount of money. And this fellow paid that house off in 7 years. And the way he did that was by moving himself into an apartment, renting the house out, paying the mortgage out of the rent that he was charging, and then paying more on top that he could afford to pay as a result of the fact that he was living in a much cheaper apartment. So like I say, he was able to pay that off fairly quickly. So I'm not saying it's not possible to be prudent in how you do that sort of thing. Of course it is. You can do that. That all being said, though, the obvious and most reasonable and prudent way to do that sort of thing is certainly through cash, through being able to pay things outright. Now, what can you not do that business can do? Well, generally, you can't go to your boss and say, I want a pay raise on any kind of a regular basis without him or her saying no. You can't do that. That's not going to work. Business can up the prices of their products, and in the process, what will happen is they will make more money, and it will make it possible for them to buy things that they wouldn't have been able to buy at a lesser rate. So they can do that. And in that sense, they're like the third entity that we want to talk about, and that's government. Government has the ability to increase taxes, but they also can do a couple of other things. They can do the credit thing. Typically, they borrow from other governments, other countries, as opposed to buying or borrowing from entities like credit companies, right? They borrow from countries instead. And the other thing that they can do is this process of printing money. They actually have the ability to say, okay, we're going to print money, and that'll help us to get what we want. So, and that's something you can't do. If you print money, there's a name for that. It's counterfeiting, and that's whether you're a business or an individual. And of course, that's not just frowned on, it's literally illegal in pretty much every country in the world. And you can argue that that's unfair if you want, but the reality is you can do it. Here's the thing. The reality, honestly, is if you are a country and you print money except to replace the existing supply, you are asking for inflation. Back when money was backed by something like gold or silver or some other commodity that had a definite supply, a specific amount of supply, and that where you would have to get more of it to increase your monetary supply, it was possible to make it so that you couldn't print money unless you could come up with more or reduce the worth of a given, or excuse me, increase the worth of a given amount of gold or whatever. So what an ounce might have been worth $1, and now it's worth $2 an ounce, right? So you could do that. But the point is, when money was tied to a particular commodity, there was a way to keep people from just printing money when they wanted. Now there's this concept, it's quantitative easing, and basically the idea is if you want to buy more, you just print more money. And that works for governments, but what it actually does to individuals is another thing entirely, right? Individuals don't have the benefit of having the first use of that money, and the result is, with more money on the market, that dollar loaf of bread, if you print twice as much currency, becomes a $2 loaf of bread. That's how that works out. It's just that plain and that simple. Because what happens is people will pay what the market demands until the market demands more than they're willing to pay. It's really that simple. So the point is, government has these ways of buying things that are really not necessarily all that bright. One is borrowing from other countries, like I say, and the problem with that particular thing is that it means you're beholden to those other countries. The second thing that they do is to print money, and that means that your money becomes worth less, and that, not worthless, but worth less. And that means that you suffer inflation as a result of your activities. And the final thing that they can do is tax people. Now, here's the problem. In order to tax people, they have to have money to pay the taxes. Now, I'm just going to say something really quick. There's this tendency to want to couple the gross domestic product of a country to what the government can spend in a given period of time. Look, we've already long since in the United States set ourselves in deficit spending. Bad plan. Bad plan. Okay? But to make that worse, let's say you've got a GDP of $1.4 trillion. This is just an estimate. This is not, none of this is real. None of this is absolute. But let's say you've got $1.4 trillion in deficit. Does that mean that government can spend $1.4 trillion on various programs that exist? No, it doesn't, because you can't take everything of the gross domestic product off of the people and be okay. And even if you talk about things like money and savings and so forth, that doesn't really fix the problem. You're still not likely to have enough money. So when you say we're going to instead do $2.9 trillion in spending this year with a GDP of 1.4 trillion, you can't help but run a deficit as a result of that activity. And that's a really, really bad way to do business. You and I know if you get in too much debt, sooner or later, your best option is going to be to declare bankruptcy unless you can get into a position where you're making a whole lot more money. I don't see a way that we can do making a whole lot more money in the United States at this point in time, so I don't think that's a real thing. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up. I'm coming to the end of my little time here today, but I think you get the idea. When you're a person, you can make enough money to pay for what you want to pay for. You can get credit of various kinds, borrow money from various kinds of people. You can't print money. When you're a company, you have pretty much the same constraints, except that you can actually, quote, tax more, if you will, by making it so that your products are worth more. When you're a government, you can borrow from typically other countries, which is typically a bad plan, not normally a good plan. You can print more money, which is almost never a good idea, or you can tax people in order to try and make money. And of course, you can run a deficit in the process, and that's really a bad idea. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this good. This is my second attempt at a video today, and I finally managed to get one out there. I think that will be good. I hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you. Today, as I've said, is Friday, the 12th of March of 2020. 2021. Means tomorrow will be Saturday the 13th of March 2021, so we missed the bullet if you're a believer in the superstitious idea of Friday the 13th by a day. Again, thank you for everybody who's joined me from Rumble, the podcast, and YouTube. Again, the subject of today's little video has been Paying the Piper. Tomorrow's subject will be unequal justice, where we'll talk about why there is unequal justice, and we'll make some arguments that maybe people aren't really considering all that well at this point in time. Again, I hope you're having a good day. I hope to see you when I do my next daily summation. Hope everything is going well for you and that your weekend turns out to be a good thing. And hopefully we will see you again tomorrow. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video is recorded on Friday the 12th of March of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S, .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.